I think anytime someone wants to change, they got to make a decision every single day that they can learn and they can be better and they can grow, they can be successful. They have to make that decision no matter how much it hurts, no matter how, you keep telling yourself you're not going to make it. You got to be able to say within yourself, you know what, whether you believe in God or not, you got to be able to say within yourself, I can do this. Like, I have the ability, I have the capacity, and I deserve it.
Hi, I'm Wyatt. And I'm Grace. And you're listening to Our Dad and your host of the Vacation Rental Revolution podcast.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Vacation Rental Revolution podcast. I'm your host, Shawn Moore, and we are back with our Experts Corner segments of these podcasts. And you guys, I can't tell you how excited I am about our guest today. He and I have been kind of jamming for 15 or 20 minutes, and I looked down at the clock and said, man, Mr. Lorenzo Sewell, I got to get you out of here. I know how busy you are. You're on Capitol Hill right now fighting all these battles that you're fighting the good fight. But those of you who don't know, I've got Mr. Reverend Lorenzo Sewell from Senior Pastor of 180 Church in Detroit, Michigan, delivered the most amazing benediction that I have ever heard at the inauguration of Donald J. Trump like about a month and a half ago. And so, Mr. Sewell, thanks so much for joining me. This is going to be a fun conversation.
Shawn, I'm so Holy Ghost happy to be here with you and your listeners. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Absolutely, my man. And it is, before we hit record, we talked about a number of things, but I told you, Mr. Ed Milet always says, God does not call the qualified, he qualifies the called. And you are a living, breathing example of being more than qualified. And I cannot tell you how proud my family is, my extended family, all of my community, everybody here in Utah that I talk to and outside of here. You were the shining star of the inauguration, the kind of the global stage you're getting thrust upon right now is more than deserved. You have this unbelievable ability to inspire and articulate at such a high level. But I would love to start with your backstory, because it is not a backstory that is, full of sunshines and rainbows all the time.
Shawn, and I hope your listeners, I hope they're able to realize from this story that God can even use a broken crayon to still color.
Right. Love it.
That God can take a crooked stick and still draw a straight line. Yeah. That people would hear this and they would watch this and they would understand that I was born and raised from the east side of Detroit, mentored by murderers, student of the streets. I grew up during a time when crack was an epidemic. I remember my uncle breaking into my home, stealing things. I remember the first time we got into a physical altercation with a group of guys from our community, and kids just a couple years older than I was got guns. I'll never forget that. I remember, being in a drive-by at 11 years old, playing Atari video games and bullets flying out, right? And Shawn, I remember being a street pharmacist. I was a drug dealer. My dad went to prison for murder, and I was selling drugs because I wanted somebody to tell me good job, even if I was doing the wrong thing. I was looking for my father, right? And to all those that may be watching or listening, never underestimate the influence your father had over you, right? We try to deny it sometimes. I know I've spent a lot of my life, I'll be 44 here in March, and I've spent a lot of my life trying to deny how influential my father's absence was in my life. And he wasn't always absent. He was there for a greater part of my rearing and raising. And he taught me how to box. He taught me a passion for reading. He taught me a passion for history, right? He taught me how to be disciplined in sports. So he wasn't always not there, right? Yeah. But in the times when I needed him the most, he wasn't. You see?
Yeah.
And we long for that. As men, as humanity, I believe this is why God says he's our heavenly Father. Right? I believe that because we are wired to want our dad's love, right? And for anyone out there that may be listening or watching, if you haven't made it right with your dad and you haven't made peace with your father, make that peace, right? Maybe dad wasn't in your life, or maybe, right? Because that's why I sold drugs. I was looking for my dad's approval. And I was 18 years old. I'll never forget it. I was in Daytona Beach on spring break, and I was out of my mind. I was cutting myself. I was on acid, ecstasy, and shrooms. I was cutting myself. And someone came to me, a security guard. He escorted me out of my resort, and he asked me if he could pray for me. Right? And I wasn't raised in the church. I wasn't reared in the church. It wasn't like our family was anti-God, right? It wasn't like we were anti-Christ. It was just that we didn't have a discipline of going to church. And maybe somebody's listening out there. I would encourage you, get into a good church. I would encourage everybody, and not trying to push religion, but it's an occupational hazard.
Yeah. Right.
So he prayed for me, Shawn. And when he prayed for me, I experienced something that I never felt nor knew of at the time. I was convicted. I was convinced that my sins of dealing drugs were wrong. Like, it was a business for me, high cash business, low healthcare. Healthcare wasn't good. The healthcare plan wasn't good. But I was a drug guy, and that's what I did. And I felt that was the best way for me to make money. And I made a lot of money doing it. But when he prayed for me, I realized this was wrong. This was not right. I should not be doing this. And I went to the only church I knew of at the time, my grandmother's church, once we came back from Detroit. And I'll never forget it. It was April 18th, 1999. I was in my grandmother's church, and I had drugs in my pocket. My brow was bleeding. My heart was broken. And I was searching. And maybe there's somebody out there listening, and maybe someone's watching that, they have everything on the outside, right? Perhaps they have power. Perhaps they have prestige. Perhaps they have all of the externalities that the world would say to us, you're successful. Yeah. But on the inside, no one knows, but they know. They know they're empty. That was me. Me. I had everything on the outside, but on the inside, I was empty. And Bishop Merritt at Straight Gate Church, Jesus says, enter into the straight gate, because broad is the way and wide is the gate that leads to destruction, and there be many that enter therein. But straight is the gate and narrow is the way that leads to life, and there be few that find it. Straight Gate Church. I was in that church. Bishop Merritt, he said, does anybody want to give their heart to Christ? And Shawn, you got to imagine this. This was at a time in the late 90s where it was like a rock concert. Yeah. I mean, it was just thousands of people. I'm in there. I got drugs in my pocket. My driver, he drove me there, and I'm weeping. I walked down the aisle, and I knew I found something. I knew I found someone, Shawn. I knew that everything that I had on the outside that wasn't satisfying me, I knew I found someone who was fulfilling that desire. I didn't understand it cognitively. It wasn't like it was an intellectual thing, so to speak. It was a spiritual thing. I would even go as far as saying a spiritual awakening. There was a fulfillment, right? In my soul, in my heart, in who I was as an 18-year-old kid. And I finally felt like I met my father. You see, the father I always wanted, the father I always needed. So, got baptized, but I was still a drug dealer. Still got drugs in my pocket. That same day, I went back to tell the guy I was selling drugs for, who became like a surrogate father to me, he became like he was like a surrogate dad. I went to Larry and I said, Larry, I'm done. And he says, what's wrong? Are you sick? Are you hurt? Are the cops on to you? I said, no. I said, I gave my life to Jesus. And I thought he was going to hurt me. I thought there would be physical abuse. I thought, worst case scenario, he would take my life. And I knew in my heart that if God was real, he would protect me. I didn't have the Bible verse for it. I didn't know the Bible from a blunt, literally. Right. I mean, right? Had no idea. But I in my soul, I knew that if God was real, he would protect me, and he did protect me. And I went to go walk out his house, and he said, Zoe. I turned around, and he said, I respect you. So think about this. On Friday, I'm a dope dealer. And on Monday, I'm a hope dealer.
Yeah.
People thought I took a bad hit of acid. I mean, kids they're looking at me like, what happened to you? Like, how did you go from Friday being a guy who was selling dope? Now on Monday, you're literally preaching,
right,
selling hope. You're inviting people to church. What happened? And I believe Jesus does that. And the same reason why I believe he did what he did at the inauguration at the RNC and when President Trump came to my church. I believe Jesus does this to show everyone that's listening and everyone that may be watching, to show them that God can do anything with anybody. If we give him a shot, we give him a chance.
I love it. I love it. And I will tell you, because pretty much whatever you're selling, I'm buying right now. And so I'm glad I met you when you're selling Jesus instead of drugs. And so because I might have been in trouble if I met you in the late 90s, early 90s, right?
Yes, sir.
So, but here you start selling, you're selling drugs and you say you start selling hope. And that doesn't pay as well, right? And so it's still a scary time. And so as you go through this major change in your life, right, and you get inspired, I'm always curious to, what, and you help people, you went through this, but you also help people create lasting change in their lives, right? And we all get in our comfort zone, and everybody's comfort zone is different. And we have to get out of that to create that lasting change. And we were talking a little bit about this, but you're never going to outperform your standards. So how do we reset those standards? And because, like you said, inspiration, motivation, all of that stuff fades, and lasting change is hard, because the minute you go back to selling hope, I'm sure, and maybe I'm wrong, but my opinion is, been guessing that you probably had, a week or two into it and thinking, man, I'm not paying my bills as much. I don't have the cash in my pocket that I did being the street pharmacist. Right. And so and that's just one aspect of it. As we run down these roads of change, those roads of change are hard. And so I'd love to hear your thoughts about that and creating that lasting change and what it takes. And, that we talked a little bit about that, that personal character, that self-reliance, that, saying, hey, listen, nobody's coming to save me. And how do you stay on that road and keep running down that road? Because it's hard.
Yeah, Shawn, that's a very good question. It's been well said. You don't get your goals, but you get your habits.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So, and a lot of people look at my prayer at the inauguration. They don't understand that that's 24 years of habits.
Yeah.
People, they'll look at that prayer at the inauguration, or they'll see that. And I've never really just been this candid about it, because I've not had an audience like this of professionals and people that are, high achievers. And I never had an opportunity to really talk this frankly about it. Literally, that's 24 years of every single day preaching. I preach every day. And I don't preach on Sundays. Yeah. I preach every day. I study the Bible every day.
Yeah.
I pray the way I prayed at the inauguration. I pray like that every day. It's not that, people may look at it and say, people that don't know me, or, I have critics, and I understand how that is. People may look at it, even me going on my crypto, doing the whole crypto meme coin thing. People think like, oh, he's just doing that. No, I've been an entrepreneur my entire life.
Yeah.
It is what it is. It's not like, Lorenzo's an opportunist. No, I've been a serial entrepreneur since I was a street pharmacist. Now I just do it for the right reasons.
Right.
Now I do it to help people, right? So I think there's two things. I think the first thing is attitude, right? Who's ever out there and they're thinking, okay, I need to make a change. I think the first thing is, what's your attitude about that change? I every day tell myself that I'm the greatest leader of my generation. Every day. And there's not a day that goes by that I don't say that to myself.
Yeah.
And why? Somebody would say, well, that may be arrogant, or that may be whatever. Well, I read the Bible and I really believe it's true. And I believe people like David, who were flawed people. I'm not saying I'm a perfect person. I'm not saying I don't have character issues. I'm not saying that I don't have things that I need to change.
Yeah.
My point is my attitude about that change. It's small steps, significant distances, right? Every day I'm taking a step. Now, there are days where I take 2 steps back.
Yeah.
But my attitude about that is what? Okay, dust myself off. If you're a person of faith out there, you say your prayers, you confess your sins, and you go back again and you go back at it. You're every single day. There's not a day where I have a misstep, a mistake, or a mishap and don't say that I can be better because I believe Christ is inside of me. Now, for those who aren't believers, or for those who would say I don't believe in God, what I would say is you could say I have been wired for greatness. I have been designed for greatness. You actually, and this is where I think the hard part is for people like me who are people of faith. There is a false humility and there is a self-deprecation that sometimes you don't think you deserve it. And God's like, hold on for a second, time out. You don't think you deserve it? Well, I died for you. That's how we're now. This is from the faith side, right? Yeah. And I do believe there is an unhealthy, and I do believe there's a balance, right? And I do believe there's a difference between being conceited. The most successful people that I've seen in my life, people like President Trump, who I have a personal relationship with, they're the most humble people. Yeah. You have this. It's almost like a humble boldness. It's almost like you're aware of who you are, but you're also aware of how God at any moment can take everything away from you, type of thing. So there's that balance. So anybody can go on one side of the extreme. I do believe that when you understand how gifted you are and that you deserve greatness, there is a part of you that understands that your greatness is about serving others.
Yeah, I love it. And
they're connected.
I love the point you made of saying, hey, listen, because everybody wants the view, nobody wants the climb. And we don't talk about the climb enough, right? We never look at but everybody sees the person at the top of the mountain, and they don't say, there's no overnight successes. We always have this overnight success syndrome that we think that's how it works. Overnight successes are 10 and 20 year, just grinding it out for a long, long time and getting really, really good. And then you also mentioned having the ability to have a balance of humility and confidence. And if you're if you only have humility, you're going to be sitting in the back of the room. You're never going to take your shot. You're always going to be wishing, man, you're never going to be the person who says, I'm glad I did instead of I wish I had, right? But if you're only full of confidence and no humility, that other side of the coin is, you're very arrogant. You're just going to bulldoze people. You're going to be, you think it's all you and not somebody else alongside with you. We're both men of faith, and so having Jesus, having a shoulder around us is a lot of times what we think is somebody's walking down that road with us, right? Even though the road sometimes feels like we're alone, but that balance, we're always studying high performers. We're always studying what does it take to change our standards. And there is a major balance in almost anybody you see that operates at a very high level of confidence and humility. And they're constantly walking that line, right? Because you have got to believe in yourself. You've got to believe that everything, all the opportunities are there for you and not just for somebody else. And if you ever find yourself saying, man, it must be nice, or they're so lucky, I always challenge people if you ever say somebody, oh man, it must be nice for them, or they're so lucky, or look at that, challenge yourself to say, hey, listen, take a step back and understand what it took for them to get there. Because almost every backstory you find has a lot of dragons around every corner that had to be slayed. And there was a lot of hard times, and there was a lot of effort put in, and there's steps every single day, and not every day is a step forward, like you said. And it is always fascinating to me. And I think that, I just always want to ingrain in my own mind, and even our listeners and everybody we try to work with, is overnight successes are not really a thing, right?
It's not.
It's not something that happens. And lasting change has to believe and starts with that hope. Right? We have to hope for a better future. We have to hope for something more, right? But we have to also believe we can do it, right? And sometimes, like you mentioned earlier, that, hey, it's really nice to have other people around that are a few steps ahead of you that can share, how to accelerate some of that progress, tell you it's okay at times, being, and I always, I run a business podcast, and investors, I work with a lot of investors, and they always say, stay away from politics and religion. And I say, that's like telling a farmer not to pay attention to the weather. And, if I'm not going to pay attention to those things are important to me. That's what we're going to talk about. But there are a lot of times where that hope and belief starts with faith and saying, hey, listen, there is a better tomorrow for me. There is something that I can do better than today. And I couldn't agree more with you that's, it starts with just that one step one step every single day. Don't try to jump to the top of the mountain, because honestly, you might make it to the top of the mountain and you're not ready to be at the top, and you're not qualified to be at the top yet. You have to go through the hard times, climbing up that ladder and gaining the strength of what it's going to take to be on the platform you're going to be on. Look at your platform right now. It's a global platform. It's an amazing platform. You might not have been ready if you got put on that platform at 20 years old, when you started on this journey.
Absolutely. And it's interesting, Shawn, because what I've come to realize is, God, I believe, and some people will say fate. If you're not a person of faith, I believe that God, He puts everybody at the right place at the right time because you willed it. He already willed it. Yeah. But it's almost as if you can bend the world's will towards you.
Yeah.
And how does that happen? I believe it happens when you remember the movie Tom Hanks. Remember Castaway? Remember that movie Tom Hanks? I don't really remember that movie Tom Hanks, right? Uh-huh. But remember when he made the decision to get off the island? Like, he's just like, I'm going for it, right? Yeah. And I believe, and I know there's some examples in antiquity in terms of to burn the boats, right? That whole analogy. There's got to be a place in your life where you say, you know what? I'm burning the boats.
Right.
I'm going to jump out.
Right.
And you know what? And I don't have an option but to succeed. And like for us, we don't take a salary from the church. We went 4 years without having an income. We have 3 children. We got arrested last year for going into my own church. People broke into my church, took money out of the church. People that never were members of our church. Like, we've been sued. I can go on and on and on. I've not had a perfect marriage. My wife has loved me perfectly. Like, I can go on and on and on about scenarios with my children whom I love, who are amazing children. But we've had our trials. And I think this is the thing. I think we get so addicted to the highlights that we don't understand that it's the lowlights that make us, right? It's not the what we see on Instagram, what we see on X, and what we see on, those are the highlights. But it takes, I believe, 1 million lowlights for you to get one highlight.
Right.
And I think we get so addicted to the highlights, and when we don't see ourselves there, we get this attitude of, I'm not worth it, I don't deserve it, someone else is lucky, instead of us learning. So me, I'm on a hill today. I'm on a hill, right? And it's brutal. It's you walk about 30,000 steps a day from between going through the Capitol and going on the House side. You don't know where you're going half of the time. And then finally when you meet with someone from Congress, you only got about 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Right? So the question becomes, does Lorenzo at that moment get frustrated, get mad, and get upset? Or do I in that moment say, let me learn, let me get better, let me understand how to navigate these waters in a way that I can be efficient, that I can be effective, right? I got to make a decision, right? And I think anytime someone wants to change, they got to make a decision every single day that they can learn and they can be better and they can grow, they can be successful. They have to make that decision no matter how much it hurts, no matter how, you keep telling yourself you're not going to make it. You got to be able to say within yourself, you know what, whether you believe in God or not, you got to be able to say within yourself, I can do this. Like, I have the ability, I have the capacity, and I deserve it. Like, that self-talk and that growth mentality, I believe there's been some research done out there with high performance people. There's that mindset of growth mentality versus that mindset of kind of like that stuck mentality, right? When you have that mindset to say, you know what, I can do it. I may not be able to do it now.
Yeah.
But I will get this done.
Yeah.
I will get it done.
Yeah. And I'm willing to walk the walk. And I'm willing to, to move forward, right? It's like, where your surrogate father, was his name Larry? Was that his name when you had to go have that conversation, right? Everything we want is on the other side of some of the scariest things that we will ever have to do at that time in our life, right? And, when you talk about it or looking back, you're like, man, that wasn't that scary. But I'm sure at the time, that was a very, very scary conversation, not just the conversation, but the world and the life you were choosing to walk into. But you knew that there was, you just had that belief that there was something there. Right. And you had somebody that put their arm around you and said, hey, can I pray for you? I mean, it's very always interesting to me too, those times in people's lives that do the light switch goes on and they get to the point of saying enough's enough, and sometimes it's somebody putting their arm around you. Sometimes it's just a look of disappointment from somebody that we wanted their support. Sometimes it's actually getting, losing everything, your life's in, you go to jail, you go to prison, you come out of it saying, hey, listen, I'm going to do something different. But at some point there's always a moment that says, hey, this is going to change for me. But then that next step after that is stepping out of that comfort zone, stepping out of the world that we used to live in, because I don't care what world it is, whether you're a drug addict, whether you're really comfortable in your life, making a couple $100,000 a year and you're wanting to do better. It doesn't really matter what that moment is. The next step when you say, I want something different, is really, really scary because it's the unknown, right? We're stepping into something that is unknown for us.
It's interesting. I think, Shawn, that when you have politics, so I'm just, President Trump came to my church, right? Yep. I'm in a Democratic stronghold. And I'll never forget the moment when I was doing a podcast called Politics in the Pulpit. And the person who was helping me produce it, they looked at me and they said, listen, Pastor, you got to make a decision right now. Are you going to go all in for Trump? And look, I've been a Republican my whole life. Right? Straight ticket Republican. But I wasn't for Trump or against Trump. I looked up to him. I thought he was a great business guy. Politically, I thought he was okay. But I wasn't a MAGA guy.
Right.
I wasn't against it. But you wanted to see me with a MAGA shirt on. Yeah. Especially in the hood. Right? I live in Detroit. I serve Detroit. Come on, Yeah. So anyway, I thought about it. And I'm like, man, he just came to my church. And it was in that moment where I said, to your point of making that decision. And I just said, you know what? I'm going to go all in. And remember, Biden was in the race. President Biden was in the race then. And they had not had their debate. It was a 34 felonies thing. That all just happened, right? And then when I made that decision to go all in, and it's interesting that because this made me think about this as you were talking about that decision, right? When I made the decision to go all in, he had that debate with President Biden. And we know how that debate went, right? President Joe Biden wasn't all the way there cognitively. We kind of knew that already. And President Trump, actually, I couldn't even watch the debate. It was that, I'm a man of faith. I didn't feel like it was fair. Yeah. Because of where our former president was in terms of his cognitive. I just didn't feel like it was right. So I actually prayed at a gathering, a watch party, and I left because I just didn't have peace, right? So anyway, so he wins that debate, and it looks like I got the guy. This is great. I got the guy, right? He gets shot. I preach at the RNC. Everything, this is great. All is well. And then Vice President Harris got into the race. I'm getting phone calls from Black people that I would have never got if President Joe Biden would have stayed in the race. Right. I'm getting calls now. You're against your mom. You're against a Black woman. I'm getting these calls now from people that I love. Yeah. People left my church because of it. And decision, right? You're making that decision, right? And then that debate he had with her. And regardless of what we feel about the debate, the overarching narrative was, and we know a lot with media and the spin and all that, but the overarching narrative was that he lost. Yeah. People felt that he lost that debate. Yeah. Regardless of where you stand, people felt like he lost. So you begin to see this, maybe he may lose. Right. You got to remember, I bet on the horse. It looks like the horse is about to lose. Right. And in my context, I'm going to get stoned. I mean, this isn't, it's okay. I'm a false prophet then. If he loses, I'm a false prophet.
You're right. Right.
If he loses, I'm done. Right? So now, talking about making a decision. So now I'm at the watch party. And Shawn, the numbers are coming back from every state we need to win. Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia. And it is not going well.
Mm-hmm.
I am in Florida. I am at his watch party. I'm there. And it looks like he's about to lose. Shawn, someone comes up to me and says, Pastor, we need to stop watching the media. We need you to get up there and pray. And I really believe that was God speaking to me through this individual. And I believe, whether you're a person of faith or not, I believe we all have those serendipitous moments when we're like, this is divine. This is more than just coincidence, so to speak. Right? So I went, and Shawn, God is my witness, I found the place to pray. And I'm praying, and I'm crying. And I'm like, God, please give us Michigan, give us Georgia, give us Pennsylvania, give us Wisconsin, because we needed Wisconsin. We needed all those swing states. And I just prayed, and I prayed for about 45 minutes. And maybe if you're a person out there and you're not of faith, or you're a person out there and you're just wondering, are there these coincidences? I really do believe that people who pray get things that people who don't pray don't get.
Yeah.
I mean, I just believe that. And I hope I don't offend anybody with that. But I really, to the depth of my heart, believe the reason why I'm on this call with you, not because I'm articulate, not because I have, all the other things that we do as people or high performers. I do believe that God has to allow there to be a convergence moment when your gifts and your ability and your talents match up in the moment. I just believe if God doesn't create that moment, I don't care how gifted you are. I just really, I don't know how hard you work. I just believe that in the wisest and the richest man of all time said it, Solomon, the King Solomon, he said it. He said, it's about being at the right place at the right time. You got to have that moment. So, and then we know what happened, right? President Trump won. And when he won, I was like, wow, God, thank you.
Yeah.
This is awesome. He won. And then he called me to pray at the inauguration.
So amazing, right?
What's the odds? And he promised it. He promised that at my church that would happen. But who knows that he would remember? Who knows that, out of all the other preachers and priests and rabbis and imams and all the other clergy that could have prayed, and Shawn, I would have never felt as if I was done wrong or he had done anything wrong if he had never let me there, right? But who am I?
Right.
So there is that part of it too, where you're like, he didn't have to do that.
Right.
But I believe that I believe he allowed that to happen for me to have conversations with people like you and your audience to let them know that if you put in the work in secret, God will reward you openly. I
love it. Love it.
It really will.
100% agree with you and double down on that. Like I was telling you before, I'm not a person that can quote many Bible verses. I know one Bible verse that I have on my wall, and that's the only one. It says, to whom much is given, much is expected, right? That's one that I do know. But my point is, I don't necessarily study the Bible all the time, but I pray every single day with my family. Every night at the end of every day, even if I'm out of town, we get on a phone call and it's on speaker, and our prayers in our family are maybe different than other people's, but our version of a prayer is we all say a prayer. We all say what we're grateful for. We all try to place blessings on somebody else and that may need it, and we do that every night. And it is really powerful for us as a family. And, but it's always interesting because when you look at somebody in their darkest hours, whether they, and many times they're not people of, they don't go to church every day, and they're not the poster child, religious person, if you will. And in their darkest hours, they don't ask for stuff. They don't ask for anything, but what they do, they ask for is prayers. and they ask for people to pray for. And just like, and we appreciate it, right? My mom is going through cancer right now. And one of the things that she appreciates the most is when somebody says, "Hey, I prayed for you and I'm thinking about you." And, and there's an energy there, I believe, that gets exchanged. And like you said, I think that you've got your run is just getting started. You're just, all that work you put in is going to get rewarded significantly. Not going to always be, the easiest road. There's going to be people that are going to tell you all the things you're doing wrong and all the things that why you shouldn't be doing it. And, and whatever the chatter is from the outside, but also, you have inspired a lot of people, and myself included, and why we reached out. And I'm so honored that you joined me today. I know how busy you are. I know I want to be respectful of your time. We're going to get you going. I know you're on Capitol Hill, they'll fighting, a whole bunch of different battles and figuring out how to navigate that new world. Right. And so, at the end of these episodes, and so Pastor, I always ask, if you could go back to that younger self, if you could tell somebody, "Hey, listen, here's one piece of advice I'd like you to think about in their darkest hour, before they make that big decision to say, hey, listen, I'm going to step into these really scary waters that I don't know how to navigate." Does something come to mind that you would tell somebody there?
Yeah, Shawn, what I would tell that person is, you can do this. You're built for this. Yeah. You're built for this. And the greatest sermon that you'll ever preach is a sermon you preach to yourself, right? The greatest message that you'll ever preach is the message that you'll preach to yourself. And the greatest miracle I believe that happens inside of us is the miracle of really believing that God made you for more than you could ever think or imagine. Like, what he has for you to do is so far beyond. I mean, come on now. I'm from the east side of Detroit, Shawn. Come on. Like, what's the odds? What's the odds, right? I'm here. I'm in the Senate. I'm in Tim Scott's office right now. Yeah. I'm in Senate. The longest running Black senator in our country. Right. During Black History Month, which I call it American History Month. What's the odds? Talking to you, your audience, right? My point is this. If I could go back and I could speak to my younger self, or someone that is in a position where they need to make that decision, what I would encourage them to do is tell themselves, you are made for more than you could ever think, ask, or imagine. Whatever you could possibly articulate, whatever you could possibly imagine, you are made, and you are going to do more than that. That's what, if we can believe that about ourselves, that this is how kids gets put in a situation like this, right? It's just literally believing that you're able to do more than you could ask or think.
Love it. I love it. And I every time I'm about to make a big decision or try to do something scary, I always say a very similar prayer. And I don't ask for it to be easy. I don't ask for everything to go my way. I don't ask to win the game right out of the gate. What I always ask is, hey, listen, I believe I can do this. I know there's going to be hard times ahead. I just ask that you put your arm around me during those hard times and keep reminding me that I can do it. And that's the prayer that I always ask and say, and it's that version. And so I love it. I appreciate it. My man, you are a rock star. It's been an amazing conversation. And those of you listening, I don't even have to ask you to share this show. I know you guys are going to. I know you're going to like it, your thumbs up. But this one's going to be one of those that gets shared a lot. And so, I always appreciate everybody's time. We know how valuable your time is when you're listening with us, and we appreciate it. I hope you got as much out of this conversation as I did. I know I'm just going to keep re-listening to this conversation because it was so amazing. So, Reverend Lorenzo Sewell, you are a rock star. I appreciate it. I wish you all the best. And we will always be praying for you to continue to fight the fight, and just big things are going to happen for you. And we're excited to watch from the sideline. Those of you that are listening, you guys know that I ask you two things at the end of every episode. The first is, if you like it, give us a thumbs up, review it on whatever platform you're watching or listening on. And the final, most important thing, some of the stuff we've talked about today and every day, is to pick that one thing you can do to start building that life that you don't want to take a vacation from. Cheers, my friends.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Vacation Rental Revolution podcast. Share this with other people you think need to hear about it. And don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. Hey Grace, is there a website? Yes! For more amazing content and expert advice, visit Vodacy.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.